So with that, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to make use of the chat. But with that, we'll go ahead and we'll transition to an introduction of our colleagues who will be participating in our first panel for the event. So I'm very grateful to this group, not just because of their willingness to participate in this conversation today, but because the three people that you see on the screen, as well as our colleague Taylor Dunn from San Diego Economic Development Corporation and Deborah Majeski from DTE Energy, have been incredible partners to help us compile, I think, a very useful set of case studies to better understand how TPM can be leveraged in the context of opportunity populations. So our colleague David DeLong, who has been a part of our TPM family for quite some time now, had an opportunity to really go through this writing process with our colleagues. And so we thought he would be the perfect person to facilitate a conversation among two of them. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Dave DeLong, who is the president of Smart Workforce Strategies and the main author of our OP report that will come out tomorrow, as well as the author of the 4 case studies that we previously linked, along with our wonderful colleagues, Lori Mays from the Kentucky Chamber Workforce Center, and Sharon Miller from Consumers Energy. So thank you so much to you all, and I leave you in great hands for this conversation.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm still hyperventilating a little bit from everything you guys are doing or achieving. It's really, really quite amazing. I'm really excited about this panel because it aligns with the research I've been doing for the last year and a half on employing marginalized workers. Basically, I'm going to start by just introducing our 2 participants. Sharon Miller, Director of Talent Pipeline for Consumers Energy, and Lori Mays, who wins the title, Lori, for the longest title of the day, Agriculture and Equine Talent Pipeline Project Manager for the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Did I get that right?
Spot on.
Okay, great. To begin our conversation, can you each take a few minutes to provide an overview of your TPM efforts, particularly describing how you've prioritized opportunity populations? And I don't know who wants to go first. Sharon, you want to go first because you actually deal at a little bigger picture. At least I think it'll fit better.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to be here and see all the new TPM people. It's a great program that you're getting involved with at this first time out. At Consumers Energy, we got involved with TPM back in 2015, actually, when it was just a glimmer of a thing in a program, in actually Jamie's eye. And so we have been training people. Electric line workers was our gap, where we had identified that we have a shortage, that we could see retirements were coming. We actually have survived the retirement wave now. So that speaks to how effective TPM is that we've lost a lot of our retirees and been able to replace them. We have, since 2015, we have created partnership programs with a number of community colleges. We started with 2 community colleges to create a short-term, 1-year-long training program for this critical position of electric line workers. Over the next 4 years, we trained and hired over 200 people, close to 250. And unfortunately, what we uncovered was that we had really not met the bar in terms of hiring females and minorities into the job role. And so over the next 1.5 to 2 years, we really have taken on very robust intention and plan to address that gap of getting more females and minorities into it. We've learned a lot in that 2 years. We still have not met our target where we want to be, but we've made progress along the journey. We're very, very fortunate to have a CEO who values diversity, equity, and inclusion, and has made this a top priority for us. And so that helps get a lot of the support that we need, both internally and externally at the company, to take it to the next level. So I think that's kind of the baseline for us. There's Great. More to tell, but for now, I think that's a good start.
We'll come back and drill down a little bit in a couple of minutes. Lori?
Yeah, so thanks Sharon for that, and for Dave for kind of being our leader here. So we came about it. So I'm with the Kentucky Chamber Foundation, and I came into this role in 2018. So we're a little bit behind Sharon in that Kentucky was one of the first states in which the U.S. Chamber approached in doing a statewide model. So there are actually 6 of me across the state, but I'm specific to the agriculture and equine industry. And my role was a little bit unique in the beginning in that I had a joint position with an industry organization, the Kentucky Equine Education Project. That industry organization came forward to the Kentucky Chamber and wanted to be involved in this pilot program that was looking at statewide efforts. And we really kind of stumbled upon opportunity populations and using that within a pipeline. And at the time, working with agriculture and equine across the board in terms of farms, vet clinics, transportation organizations, et cetera. And there was an already established agriculture and equine training program within a federal Department of Corrections prison here in Central Kentucky. One of those that is being, you could see it from the interstate, everybody knew it was there, but they didn't really know what they did. So we started exploring what exactly that program was about. And from there, we kind of got our foot in the door with Department of Corrections here in the state, and that has blossomed into all of the other programming that we're doing with opportunity populations, and has gone from just working with those with backgrounds of incarceration, but also those that are working through substance use disorders or other hurdles to employment there for various reasons, homelessness, et cetera. So we kind of came about it in a different way, but it's opened up a whole new genre for pipelines in our specific industry areas, and then have been able to recreate those across our project managers work in different industries across the state.
Great, perfect, thank you. Jamie, can you hear me? Can you interject here your definition, the foundation's definition of opportunity populations, just so we're all on the same page, how you're thinking about that?
Great point. And a lot of people have their own definitions. For the Chamber Foundation, we think of opportunity populations as those that experience barriers to education and employment opportunities. So that can be a pretty broad definition. And I think it just goes to show that, you know, it's up to the partner to kind of interpret it in the way that works best for them. But we're always looking for the employers to help us kind of guide who are those priority populations that they're trying to get into the pipeline, to recognize that it provides immense benefits to include opportunity populations in your talent strategy.
Great. And in my research, basically that includes ex-offenders, second chance hires, as they're often called, people with disabilities, and immigrants. And then also economically disadvantaged, often single mothers or groups that face particular economic challenges and education challenges to being employed in sustainable jobs. Again, I just think it's real important that we're operating from the same place in terms of our understanding of the concepts and recognizing that it is fluent. Can we drill down now a little bit, Sharon and Lori, in terms of your experience, go further about why your effort an initiative to prioritize these opportunity populations. Can you say a little more about what led you there? What were the particular business issues and even the groups, the partners that became available to you that made it viable? Because it's very clear that to make this work, we always need a bit of an ecosystem of folks. Sharon, maybe you start.
Sure. Consumers, it's twofold. There's a need, a requirement by law through affirmative action that we make good faith efforts to reflect the communities that we serve, that we are, a statewide organization with multiple urban communities within it, and also a very rural state in many ways. And so the compelling piece there is one, compliance, and I don't want to make that the only piece, but it's part of it, and I don't want to ignore that. The other part of it, though, that's more important, I was speaking to earlier, is that our CEO and our leadership team actually believe and put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, that diversity and reflecting the diversity of our community makes us a better provider to our community. that if we are, innovation comes from diversity. When we're trying to do problem solving, when you have multiple perspectives, we get a much better outcome than when we all have the same demographics in the room. And so, you know, those reasons are very valid and real business reasons for us to do this beyond the compliance requirements that we're faced with. And so, you know, what we sought out as a solution was, one, to go to more urban communities where our training providers, we had selected 2 programs to begin with that had training programs that worked for us. And then they were willing to tailor them to us. But when we weren't getting the diversity, we had to look at what was the problem. And part of it was the location of those communities, and that their labor pool was not necessarily meeting the mark. And we also had to look at, if they were, because one of them was in an urban community, they just weren't doing the outreach that we needed them to do. So we, after a year of trying to persuade them to do more, we weren't seeing any change in the makeup of the applicants to the program. And so at that point, we said, all right, we're good here, but we're going to take a look at 2 things: the length of the program, because it was a year long, and that's too long. It's something that if you can't, as an adult, step away from work or your life for that long, this isn't really a reasonable option for you, because it's a really intense program. What we did do is cut it down from being a year long. We partnered with new community colleges and identified what we call a 5-course bundle that they can take at their leisure. And when they're done with the 5 courses, because it's not all compressed, then they can come to our 11-week climb school. And so the 5 schools that we expanded, we added 3 more. We went to Jackson, Flint, and Grand Rapids, which were 3 urban communities we had not been in. We also have Muskegon as a satellite of Grand Rapids region. So really we added 4. And through that process, we did indeed start to see an influx of more people, women and minorities, in the target audience that we had. So let me pause there, because there's more, but I can hold.
Wonderful. Thank you. Perfect. Lori, your thoughts on sort of why you did this effort to prioritize opportunity populations, sort of what led you there? And
yeah, so our industry historically in agriculture is a very grow your own industry. Most people historically had grown up on farms, been around farms or the agriculture industry, and had gone into that career-wise. And as American public gets farther and farther away from agriculture, that industry in particular has really had to shift gears to promote themselves as an industry of career opportunities, and had to look at opportunity populations that they've never strategically engaged with before. So they looked at multiple. When my thoroughbred farms, so thoroughbreds are the ones you see in the Kentucky Derby, if you watched it a couple of weeks ago, in terms of racing, is one of my largest collaboratives here in Kentucky. They really wanted to start looking at populations they haven't strategically engaged with. And that has included those with the justice involved background, those coming from substance use disorder, and the foster care system specifically. So they kind of did a blanket approach in the beginning. We kind of hit on Department of Corrections first, because that was a program that was already established. What we did find when I started doing research as a project manager with that program is that it was an established program. It had been in that particular facility for quite some time, 15 or so years. And they were doing great work inside the prison. However, when these gentlemen, it is a male only facility, were released, there was no connection to the industry. So they were released from incarceration. This was often their last kind of holding place at this particular facility. They had gained these fantastic skills in equine handling and agriculture. And then they were just turned loose and said, good luck. And we hope that this works out. And so the agriculture community came forward and said, you know, there are people coming out of this facility with fantastic skills and we need them. How do we engage with them? So we started working with the staff at Blackburn Correctional to figure out what their reentry strategies were and how we could implement working directly with employers. So that's how it kind of all started. From there, it has branched into a lot of different opportunity populations. We do see an influx of youth that have been in the foster care system, especially if they have graduated out of the foster care system from the age 18 to 23 without being adopted, that they are more likely to be in incarceration at some point in their life. We also see a lot of people that are in on drug-related charges. So that has kind of branched us out into those two populations, and working with organizations that have wraparound services for those populations. So we work with different organizations such as Goodwill, local organizations like OWL, which is Opportunity for Working Learning here in Central Kentucky, that help us with transportation, housing, clothing, all of those hurdles that someone coming from incarceration or from those other situations might have a barrier to continue successful employment with these employers. And then we, like you said, Dave, we really use a collaborative approach to make sure that we not only connect individuals to meaningful employment, but that we also support our employers for employing that population, because oftentimes they don't know those strategies for best workplace practices. So we help to educate them through various programs or connecting them to other resources, and then working with the different organizations or departments that work with those populations. So it is very much a team effort. And a lot of it has been a very big learning curve on both sides, but knowing the people that need to be involved or the positions in each entity that need to be involved has been hugely critical and beneficial for us.
Great, perfect, thank you. Before I ask you both about sort of advice that you would give to others, let me just flag for folks, well, two things. One, the case studies. If you're interested in more detail on these, you really should go on the foundation website, because they do a beautiful job with these case studies. Jamie and Nikki and the rest of the design team, there really is a lot more detail on these stories that I encourage you to get. And then I also want to invite you to ask questions. Put questions for me in chat. And in just 2 or 3 minutes, we're gonna I'll try and take a few of those, as much as I can look up and down here. But I will do that. So please, if you have burning questions, please post them in chat, because we'll try and get to them. Let me ask you both one other question, which is, for someone listening today, what advice would you offer if they were trying to prioritize opportunity populations as a talent strategy, a little bit linking it to TPM, thinking about, you know, how can you, what have you learned really from this experience? And you give advice to others trying to leverage TPM around opportunity populations.
So obviously for us, data and having the data available was a very powerful thing, because to just say, you know, we don't have the right mix of people isn't enough. We need to be able to say, here's the numbers, here's the reality. And for us to say there were 5 out of 250 people who met the goal, that's 2%. And I think that just being able to, and especially when it comes to having very frank conversations, that a lot of the time people struggle with the words and how to talk about these things. And data don't lie. You know, you can manipulate it, but only so much. You know, there's only so far you can go before you've really broken it. And so it's the access to the data was one thing. I think the other was the continuous improvement components of the program in steps 5 and 6, where you're really looking at what could we do differently and what opportunities are present in the work that we've done. And so looking at the demographics of the other communities, and also not being afraid to cut what we thought had to have competencies. You know, there's always a willingness to go a little thinner when you're motivated properly, you know? And so for us, it boiled down to those couple of things. I do think also that the length of the program still has impact on the back end for the clients. And so, you know, this is a little off the TPM rails, but it's also a recognition that opportunity populations require us to bring in people, perhaps expand our collaborative at the table when you start working with the employers, to bring the partners from the community in to sit with the employers. not keep them separate, because there, we talk a lot about it's employer driven, but when you get to some of the populations and the things that we're doing, you really want the employer and that service provider to work together. You don't want to be an intermediary. You need to let them do what they need to do to help people once they're in the employment side of things. So let me stop there.
Great. I'll come back to that partner question in a minute. Laura, your thoughts on sort of advice you'd give to others who are trying to start down this path and leveraging opportunity populations.
Yeah, so everything Sharon said is spot on, and from an industry that doesn't have a lot of data, that was key for us as well. So we can't harp on that enough. I think one of also the big things is, we talk about collaboration, and it's really finding who or what positions are key in any of those sectors that are needed. So for example, we were very, very blessed that the prison we started working with had a phenomenal warden, and she was on board from day one and was very helpful in a lot of our endeavors. But I think it's very important to find those individuals or those organizations or key players that they have a niche in something that you don't. So use their strengths to help you move forward in the goals that those employers have set. And I would also say to be flexible. I know Sharon has run into things too and hurdles along the way, but don't take no for an answer. So when you run into something, find a different way to do it. And if you have those key players involved, they will help you overcome those hurdles. And I think that is very important in terms of building those relationships and being able to kind of roll with the punches and be able to build a stronger pipeline with the knowledge that hopefully it's scalable to other facilities or companies or geographic areas, et cetera, and to learn from what others have done. And that's been very, very valuable for us in our kind of work in the last 4 or 5 years.
I just want to elaborate a touch on this partners point. Can you mention the specifics of the type of partners that you found were essential to make these programs work, and just say a little more detail about the quality of those relationships and those partnerships?
Yeah, so for us in particular, our warden was kind of our connection originally to Department of Corrections. We had a few employers who were very willing and kind of our low-hanging fruit that had not been involved with these populations before, who were willing to try, and then have gone on to be our champions for other employers getting involved, and also support organizations, whether it be workforce, in the workforce realm, or whether it be education or some type of services for the populations we're serving. I have a specific person that I can go to in any of those realms. And if they can't assist, they know who can. And that is their strength and not ours. And so we lean on them a lot. And it's been very beneficial.
Great. Sharon?
2 things I would add to what Lori said. One, she mentioned workforce, but I really want to give a shout out to the important role the workforce development system plays at this, because they are one-stop centers. And so the term one-stop, they bring it all to the game. They have all those relationships. In Michigan, I can say with certainty, Michigan Works rocks. And so, we want to bring them to the table, and we have brought them to the table. They're critical partners to us. And the other part of it is the community college system that we're working with. I mean, student success is their game. It's their goal. They're the ones who want to see people, they need people to graduate as much as we do to complete whatever that program is. And so they have formed critical partnerships that we've taken advantage of. And that's the beauty of having partners who have partners. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to own the world. They understand they're part of a critical ecosystem. And in many ways, employers are the last ones to the table in that system. That system's been working together and would have loved to have employers at the table all along, but this is just now coming at it. And of course, we had to make it our idea to be at the table, right?
Right. As we move towards a wrap up here, what's your next step? Where is this going for you? Lori, I think you're taking it more broadly to other sectors potentially, and then Sharon, I'd love your comment.
One thing that we're really getting further back into the pipeline. So we're spending more time in middle, high school, summer youth academies, things where we're planting seeds for people early on. And we want to be the organization that holds their hand as they cross multiple bridges. You know, they need to get from middle school into high school successfully. And in high school, we need them to take certain courses and think about their career. And so we're embedding personal development plans that we hold for them. You know, it's not the school's development plan, it's the employer's development plan with them. So they see that we care about their progress. And from there, you know, we've had to learn a lot of lessons about what it means to work in these populations. And boy, we could talk for hours here about this, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much, Lori.
Yeah, so just what you said, Dave, you know, we started in the equine program at that particular facility, but they do have multiple other workforce readiness engagement for their gentlemen there. So we are kind of ramping up in those other industry sectors and bringing in my other project managers at the chamber to help with those placements, and also looking at scaling those programs up into other detention centers around the state. So really just kind of scaling the model that we have put together.
Perfect. Thank you both very much. This has been, here's my timer to stop. This has been wonderful. I can't say enough about this work and its importance for a lot of reasons. And I'll turn it back to our friends, Jamie. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And it was great to see you again.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Dave. And a huge thank you to both Sharon and to Lori. And again, wanted to mention Deb Majeski and Taylor Dunn as well for their involvement in our case studies. We are very much appreciative of the great work and the fact that this has built on now several years of research and coordination with a broader network. We wrote an Opportunity Populations Resource Guide back in 2020 that I posted in the chat. So welcome you all to take a look at that resource, and certainly and big huge thanks to my colleague Joe Davis for his posting of the case studies in the chat as well, and for his involvement in getting those up looking much nicer than they would if I ever tried to get them on the web. So we'll return back to our slide deck just so that we can talk about the great breakout speakers that we have coming your way.